All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So today we're talking about a project that we worked on in Kent. We're going to be talking about why we lost money and some of the lessons that we learned from it. But before we get started, we wanted to just do a quick plug here. So Agency One Tacoma, this is our real estate brokerage firm that Jesse and I own and operate. We're an investor-friendly brokerage firm. We are flat fee, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. We also want to do a quick plug to Capital Title. So, a lot of times in these conversations, especially when we're talking about investment properties, people oftentimes ask us, what's our preferred title and escrow company? So, this isn't sponsored, they're not paying us or anything like that, but we legitimately like working with Capital Title. Yeah, this is their information if you want to reach out to them. And they're also on this call as well. So, if you have any specific title or escrow related questions, you can go ahead and ask them here as well.
All right. I want to remind everyone this is kind of set up to be, more of an open forum kind of thing. So don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any. You can do that, through the chat, or again, you can unmute. Excuse me, unmute and ask whatever questions might come up. But again, it's uh, not meant for us to just be dictating to all you guys the whole time. So just be be don't hesitate, I guess. Yeah, don't hesitate to ask questions if you have them. So let's go ahead and get started on this.
Okay. So, sorry, we've got a couple people still hopping on here. So, with the Kent project, so these are kind of like the big numbers, right? So we paid 220 for this property in 2018. We sold it for 555,000 in January 2021, and we still somehow managed to lose $40,000 or close to it.
So a little bit about this house. It was a house that had a fire, um, and it was not a total loss. We walked into this thing thinking, "Oh, this fire didn't look like it's that bad. We can just slap it back together and it'd be fine." But it ended up being a much longer process to go through for permitting and engineering and a lot of things that up to that point I hadn't done yet. When I bought this property, what I had done is a lot of just lipstick remodel, putting cosmetic stuff back together, painting, trim, doors, and roofs and windows and flooring, and then listing the house. So this was a full on process that involved a lot more than I had expected. So, right off the bat, I had assumed that, what, we can just put this back together. We know how to do this work. It's not that difficult. And I just went ahead and started working. I didn't bother getting permit. We didn't bother doing any of that. And we got to a point where I was basically adding a second story on the house unpermitted when I got red tagged. So at that point, we just had to go through the whole process. And during that process, COVID had started. So with lots of delays and lots of issues, and you know, working with architects was relatively new at the time for me. And there was some of the mistakes we made too. So I think where the mistakes really started, if we get past the point where uh, I underestimated the job to begin with and tried to do this whole thing without any permit, which I don't know why I thought we can get away with that, because there was a fire there, right? The fire there, fire department comes, insurance did pay out the owner that we bought it from. So obviously there was a fire. The city knew there was a fire, and when I really started getting working, then they came over there and stopped us immediately. Uh,
We actually did get pretty far though.
yeah, I mean we cleared everything out. We had started framing up the upstairs. It was an upstairs attic that we were just raising the ceiling on. So we had reframed the whole thing and doing everything, and that's the point where we got red tagged. Um, so from there, we had to start this permit process, which up until then I had only done. Actually, I hadn't done it yet. I was doing it on another fire project, which we could probably talk in detail about that project too. But it was uh, the first time I had been working with architects and doing plans and everything. So I hired an architect and paid him, looks like 3220, $3,220. I paid this person up front to basically do nothing for about 2 months. I chose this person because the people who I had been working with on another house and who I was referred to were charging 5,500, if I remember right, around there, 5,000 to 5,500. And I thought it was too expensive, and I thought we could just do it cheaper somewhere else. Well, yeah, I paid that first person $3,200, and they started doing a plan, and they just dragged their feet for so long that I had to hire another architect for that cost $3,400 instead. So just that alone, I'm already $1,000 above where we would have been if I had just stuck with the first person. But on top of that, I had to do engineering separately because architect number one and number two, neither one of them could do the engineering. Whereas the first place could have done all that in house. So I ended up being another $2,000 into engineering alone, which, looking back at it now, we realize they over engineered it, and we ended up spending a lot more money on the place than we had to. But
Yeah.
so I wanted to save a couple $1,000s, and I ended up spending, looks like what, about $4,000 more just on that portion. But what's more important is this whole process of screwing around with different engineers and architects and trying to nickel and dime costs us probably an extra 6 or 7 months that wouldn't have happened if we just stayed with the first person and had them help us get the permit.
Because what were we paying interest every month
We were
just to hold the property?
Yeah, we were between 2,000 and 2,200 a month in just interest payments because we had refied a couple times during this process. But we so that was just interest, not to mention property tax, not to mention any utility, which regardless of the house had a fire, there's no power, we're still paying water and sewer every month either way. So
Yeah.
property taxes as well. And another thing that we know now is there's ways to mitigate that kind of cost too. But at the time we didn't know what the hell we were doing. Not that we know much more now, but at least we know that we could have done this project a lot better.
Yeah, and a couple questions that came up here, and we're probably going to answer them just throughout the call here. But so Mu Ying asked, does the owner usually get money from insurance from the fire and take the money and just sell the house?
That's exactly what they did in this house. They did get a payout. I don't know how much the payout was, but they got a payout. They didn't live in the house anyway. This house was vacant, and homeless people broke in and basically burned half of it down. This is what happened. So they did they did a claim. They got their their payout on that, and they didn't want to deal with it because they were already selling it anyway. So they sold it as is, and then took the insurance claim.
Teddy asked, please share why it took almost 3.5 years and the speed bumps you ran into.
Oh, I think what we were just talking about, the first speed bump, really, it was kind of over or underestimating what this project was going to take to get done, right? And when you really break down what we're doing on any of these remodels, and even if you just write down what's going to get done, it doesn't seem like very much, right? It doesn't seem like it's going to be that difficult, but going from planning to do it and then executing it is a lot different things. So we knew that we're going to have to reframe this place, and we're going to have to do all the normal stuff of any remodel. But when it came to actually pulling that off and getting people in there that were qualified, getting these plans done in a timely manner, doing all the permitting, that just ended up taking a lot more time than it needed to.
And we also had a third partner in this project too. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So actually, I'll step back even further. Where what did we learn from this project? I tried to wholesale this place initially, and nobody wanted it. So that was probably should have been a red flag that I couldn't mark this place up $10,000 and sell it to anybody, right? So for me to go and say, oh, well, nobody wants it, I guess we should buy it. Like, that was probably mistake number one. I mean, this entire domino effect of mistakes. So right then and there, we should have decided, maybe we'll walk away from this. But
and I don't think it was necessarily that bad of a deal, but
Right.
it should have been at least a yellow flag that no one had the appetite
right,
to do this project, right?
exactly. But at that time, we had a little bit of money, and we were kind of getting a little bit of FOMO at that time.
Yeah.
We can't find a deal. What are we going to buy next? Oh, well, I couldn't wholesale this, so why don't we just buy it? So interest rates on that hard money, I think we were at 10%, if I remember right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is right around the time when the hard money lenders were just starting to compete with each other, and they were just starting to come down in rates, because before this, I think I was at 12%, 12% on the hard money, and they were 6-month terms. Right now, it's normal to see 1 year and you're sub 8, even sub 7% rates, and that's only 1.2. But when I started doing these, there were 12% interest, and there were 2 or 3 or even more points of loan fees, and you only had a 6 or maybe an 8-month term. So stuff's really changed in a short period of time as far as hard money goes. But
Yeah.
the first lender we started with on this one, we either started with Inland Capital or we started with Merchant Mortgage. I don't remember. I think we ended with Merchant Mortgage because we had refied with them. But we started, I believe, with Inland. Let me see. I just saw another question here a minute ago.
Do you want to come back to our third partner that we had?
Oh, right. Yeah. So another reason why I thought it'd be okay to buy this is we had another partner at the time who was a contractor who was trying to buy properties too, maybe buy his first flip, but he had done several remodels for me, and he did decent work, and he knew what he was doing, and he's like, you know what, I'll do this project for you, or I'll do this remodel with you guys, and I won't charge any labor. And our agreement was, he'll take care of the remodel, we're going to buy and hold the property and cover the cost of buying it, down payment. And the permit process took so long that by the time we had our permit, he kind of just disappeared for a little while. So that kind of left us with just this empty house that had burned down, figure out who we're going to have to remodel it.
Yeah.
Does the architect get the permit? Yes, part of what we pay them for is to handle all the paperwork process of doing the permit, because it's I feel like it's not that it's necessarily very complicated, but it's a little more complicated for me at the time, especially when I had never done it before. So it was a little bit over my head. And all right, so, but yeah, we'll kind of go through the whole timeline here, I guess. Again, we had hired our second architect, who had to sub out the engineering. That engineer took probably 2 or 3 months to do his portion, which that time we're just kind of stuck here, sitting there waiting for that to be done before the architect can finish his portion. And by the time all that's ready, several months later, architect gets the engineering back, and then they go back and forth a little bit. And for me, I'm sitting here in the middle. It's like, I don't care, just get it submitted. I don't care what we're doing. You guys know what I want. I just want to put the house back together. And that's another mistake I made during this time is this place was really over-engineered. Like, they did things where when I reviewed these plans after I had sold it with a friend of mine who was a building inspector in the city of Seattle, he basically told me that this building had the same kind of stuff that they would build like a high-rise skyscraper on. And it didn't seem like, and he said that it probably wasn't a requirement. It's just the way the engineer wanted to do it. But that being said, that ended up being an extra several $1,000s in different kinds of material and Simpson ties and all kinds of products that there's a good chance we could have avoided doing if we had just looked a little closer at what he was doing on the engineering and had a better idea of what we were looking at too. So, but it's just one of those things I feel like, at least for me, I have to go through to really understand. It's not something I could have learned by reading about it, at least personally. So, oh no, the building. This was just a single family home, regular house, 1.5 story house. The upstairs area, it was an attic, and that we turned into a master suite. So the stuff that we ended up doing, all the tie downs and all the, I think we had like 7 glulam beams we put in this building for some reason, and it was just one thing after another when it came down to it. But
yeah, it was just way over engineered.
Yeah, wait. I mean, the place. I feel like you can crash a plane into it at this point. It's not going to fall down. So, I mean, at least they got a quality. They got a quality building.
Here we've got some of the pictures of the fire damage. So here in the top left corner, like this technically could have been a bedroom, but the ceiling was actually pretty low. So it was really more like an attic space. But
yeah.
This is where the squatters went in. This is where they started the fire, and it kind of just radiated down from under there. Um, and then you can see like the kitchen and sort of like the wash area or pantry area.
God, look at that place.
Yeah.
I almost forgot what it looked like when we started. Um, so picking up where I left off, we had engineering, we had architects, we had, but it took about a year for us to actually get our permit and be able to start working. So if you remember our timeline, we purchased the place in what, 2019?
Yes.
2019. We so we didn't actually have our permit in hand until the end of 2019, and at that time we didn't have anyone to work on it. And then we finally had someone who I had just finished another project with. Then they moved over to this one in January of 2020. So they just started getting everything going, and then COVID shutdown started in March.
And at the time too, I mean, we had just enough money to be able to close on this property, but we were taking on a little bit more than what we could really handle at the time, right?
Yeah.
And so that was part of the reason why it took so long. So one of the lessons that we talked about, kind of just towards the end, right on the last slide, was dropping a carrot to pick up another carrot, right? And I think that kind of ties in with the FOMO. I think there's always opportunity to be able to make money, but I think at that time, it's just that like every deal that we saw, we thought we had to get into it, right?
Yeah, because the thought process at the time is, okay, we can get this deal now. I don't know when I can get the next one.
Yeah.
Where that really shouldn't be the way we're thinking. What the reality of the matter is there are always projects and opportunities, probably at any given time.
Yep.
So we had COVID shut down. Teddy, you're asking, how are you guys feeling during the COVID panic, and how do you overcame that? So, yeah, they shut down in March. At the time of this property, I had another one that it was a worse fire that it should have been torn down. But so I had that project that had a lot of money into it at the time we started. By the time we started here, we were over $100,000 into this project before we even started real construction. So that was down payment, that was interest for a year, that was just repeatedly taking out trash because people kept squatting in there. So COVID shut us down. The building inspectors were not doing inspections for the first, at least in Kent, for the first part of the COVID shutdown. They would not do any inspection. They wouldn't come out. So we just kind of had to sit there, with nothing we can do. We couldn't move forward because we needed things signed off in order to progress. So there were several. I think Kent actually was only a month or two before they at least started coming out to do building inspection. The other one I had, was a fire in Tukwila. They wouldn't come out at all for months. So, that made that a little bit more difficult. But, you pile that on, and we had another one, I think, in SeaTac, the garage conversion.
Yeah.
We converted a garage to a house. So we were doing all these at the same time. We went from not doing any permanent projects before to doing 3 or 4 at one time. We had also submitted for permits on another property at the same time. COVID basically stopped or shut everything down. So another one that just sit there for a while. We couldn't do anything about it. But we eventually started to be able to do inspections, at least in Kent, for around right before summer. I think it was around May when we could do the actual inspections. And another issue we were facing, and this one is the contractor that we were working with. They had done a couple projects for me and previous to this house, but seemed like they were just kind of falling off a little bit. The work quality was getting worse. They were showing up less often, and it wasn't because we weren't paying, because we were paying regular draws, but the quality wasn't that great. And then here's another lesson we learned right there is when this starts happening, we need to be realistic and we need to be upfront with the expectation we have with the people working there. Because the back of my mind, I was thinking, I don't have anyone else who can come here, so I just have to live with this. But the reality, just living with that was worse than letting it sit empty. Because not only are we paying the holding costs, but we are now paying these people to come and buying material that is getting wasted or getting ruined because it's getting rained on or getting stolen or whatever. So in retrospect, it would have been better if we just decided, if you guys can't handle this job, that's fine. You just don't work on it anymore.
Yeah, just let us know.
Let me know, and then you don't have to. I don't need you keep coming in if it's not something if you don't want to be here, basically. And there's a good chance we would have been better off, but we just kind of kept rolling with it, and the person would take extended periods of time to get to each next phase, and all the
Mhm.
while we're just still paying because, again, we're thinking, what choice do we have at this point?
Yeah.
Yep.
Something that we really didn't touch on, I think, is the selling strategy, right? Because we already knew that we're going to be losing money on this property.
Yeah.
So the mindset that we need to go in when it comes to listing the property is also equally important, right? So like we between Jesse and I mean, we've sold, I don't know, several hundred houses at this point. And so we've got a pretty good idea in terms of what the market is going to call for on a particular property. And we were probably guessing at that time or expecting to sell for about 545-ish was kind of the target that we were shooting for, but we still listed the property well under that, right?
You listed, I think, 500.
We listed it at 500. So, obviously, had we sold for 500, we would have lost,
Yeah.
that $40,000 loss would have now been, closer to an $80,000 loss. But we still listed it at a point where we knew it was going to be priced to sell. We wanted buyers to get emotional about it. We wanted to create the traffic. And we ended up still selling a little bit more than what we thought we can get, but we did it with a way more quality buyer.
Yeah.
So waived contingencies really,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
think the only
555,
the only thing they had was financing, right?
yeah, waived inspection, and really the only contingency that they had was the financing contingency, but they still had an appraisal gap addendum in there.
Yeah.
And we had multiple offers, so I think that's also just a really important point to make as well.
Yeah. Which you can say that about a lot of property a year ago, but we still underprice as opposed to what people were doing, pricing it right around or overpricing it, basically, and just letting the
Mhm.
market catch up. But what's the value of the property today? What's it worth now? A couple of you guys, Brian, Teddy, both asked that. If you had asked me 3 months ago, I'd probably say we could have got low to mid 600s for it. If we were to list it today, I think we'd get maybe right around 600 or just under 600, probably.
Yeah.
Not because the values changed so much, but because the market momentum has slowed down so much. And we're
Right.
already seeing that. And I know a lot of you are already seeing that too with the listings you're working on now.
Yeah. See you, Brian.
You're going to go back to our slide.
Yes.
Yep. So, all in all, holding costs, remodeling, every dollar we spent on the property was just under $300,000 total. We'd purchased the place for $220. All the proceeds of our sale, uh, after the loan was paid off, we had $266,000, so just under 270. There's some other costs in there that aren't really calculated on here. So, but our total loss was just right around $40,000 total. And while that sounds, I mean, you don't want to lose money. It sounds like a lot, but the saving grace was this is money we had lost over a 3-year period. So it's not like we came up with a check at closing of $40,000 to close.
Right.
We just got back less than we put into it.
So we still got, the majority of our money back, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this still is a good example of a lot of the things that you are constantly talking about when it comes to buying a property, where you really got to make money on the buy, right? And so, cost overruns, they almost always happen. It always takes a little bit longer than you think, or a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
And when you buy a property correctly, then it'll still absorb up some of the mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's still an important distinction to make.
And this is exactly why I've turned down a lot of the deals. Like even some of you guys have sent me, I turned down a lot of them, and the reason is I want to have a big margin. Like there's a chance we can go into this project for, who knows, it might take a year, and if something catastrophic happens, we might be in it, like this one, for 3 years, right? I don't think that's going to be the norm, but if it happens, then we need to buy at a point where the margin can absorb that extra holding time and blips and changes in the market as well. So again, just like Patrick said, we have to make money on the buy. Ever since we've sold this property and a couple of the other problematic ones that took some time, everything that we've bought going forward has been something we could sell immediately and probably make 40 or 50,000 on it or more just the second we bought it. So and it turns out we've kept most of those at this point. So I don't ever want to have this issue happen again. This deal, I knew the person who had found this house and they were going to buy the project, and they ended up just wholesaling it to me. So they made a small wholesale fee, just because it was a big project, a little further away than they wanted to bother working, and we took over. And I'm glad they didn't end up buying it, because I would have been a loss for them too.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. We're open up to more questions if we got any.
I think one thing that I would say though is, you got to look at the silver lining too, right? And
Yeah.
I think that, you always say something funny, like anytime that we or you have lost money on a deal, and then there hasn't really been that many, right?
Uh-huh.
But you're always saying like, okay, now I have my bachelor's degree in flipping houses. Now I've got my master's degree, right? And so essentially what we've lost is like the cost that it would be to maybe go to college and get a degree in something worthless. But um, I think the reason why I bring it up though is that there are important lessons to be learned in each one that you can carry on into the next project, right?
Yeah.
And so you got off on, there was like a couple, we had a string of really difficult flips and projects that we were working on, lots of engineering permits and stuff. But I think you're at the point where you could read these architectural plans better than a lot of the contractors now even.
Yeah.
So just little things like
I've
that.
actually turned contractors down who couldn't read basic parts of the plan, and I could read it a little bit better. Like, I don't feel like I'm an expert at reading these plans, but when I can look at it and know what I'm looking at, and the contractor looks at it and says he has no idea, then that was kind of a red flag with a couple people, and we ended up not working with them. But
Yeah.
Teddy's asking the address. Yeah, the address is you want to put it in the chat so they can have it in there?
Yeah, let me find it here.
It's 2911 South 252nd Street.
2911
South 252nd Street in Kent.
252nd?
Yeah, South 252nd Street, Kent. That's the address right there. So yeah, you can find that on the MLS, or you can find that on Zillow, Redfin, however. If there were another pandemic scare in the future, how would you gear up for round two? Honestly, I would just keep doing what I'm doing, and I wouldn't stop working, even if they told me they have to shoot me when you stop at this point. And I think a lot of people are at that point. The last time they shut all of us down, it was kind of painful, and in retrospect, it seems like it wasn't really the right thing to do. So I don't anticipate that they would be shutting us down again like that. And if they did, or they tried to, there'd probably be a lot of pushback from most of the people, especially me. But that being said, we still want to buy properly. That's really what it comes down to, is just buying properly. You buy a deal that you have equity the second you close on it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't have equity when we buy it, then there's just no reason to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather pass on this deal, even if people make money on it, and that happens too.
Yeah.
There's stuff I've passed on that people come back, oh yeah, well I made such and such profit on that. I'm like, that's great. I'm glad they did. I'm glad it worked out for everybody. But it just wasn't for us at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the house turned out nice at the end of the day. Yeah, it was a nice house, and the people who bought it, I'm sure, are happy with it. I haven't heard otherwise. So
yeah,
it ended up being a nice place. Over 683 on the Redfin. That's, I don't know. I feel that's kind of high. But I don't know. I'm conservative on the value too. I can't imagine that house would get that much right now. But who knows? We've seen crazier stuff, right?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too. I mean, not only do we want to be able to buy stuff with instant equity, but we've got to be conservative on the numbers, right? We're trying to overestimate on what the cost and the time is going to be, and we also underestimate what we think we could sell the house for too.
Mhm.
So we want to make sure that even with our conservative numbers, that the deal still pencils out. Um, and it does mean that we're going to say no to a lot of deals too, but that's okay, right? We're
Yeah,
not we're not dropping a carrot to pick up another carrot.
right. No, no
And
FOMO.
yeah, and we got to make sure that we're, thinking clearly about these things.
Yep. Let's see. And no more specific questions or anything here about this particular house. Oh, one other issue we had a lot in this particular house. Why don't you pull up that slide with the guy walking out? I do want to point out this is a house that we had squatters in on a regular basis, uh, especially right before the construction really got going. That guy there on the right is one of the squatters I kicked out. I had a video of him actually, but this one here was just I feel like every week somebody was trying to get in there, and every other week somebody did get in there.
Yeah.
Uh, this is this is actually the house where I started open carrying to these places because some of these people got violent actually. Where I think they did have a baby car seat, but it was just full of crap. But yeah, but no, I started open carrying because the fact that I was there and I was armed, I never had to draw my gun at anybody. But the fact that I had it there and they could see it was actually a deterrent on multiple occasions at this particular property where we'd pound on the door, tell them to open it, and they'd come out about to get violent. But then they saw that there I am, I'm armed, and that kind of diffused everything immediately, and they left without incident. Now this is obviously before the moratoriums and everything, but uh, they the people left on this one. So ever since then, a lot of times I feel like it's necessary to be armed going to these places because some of these people are insane or they're crazy. I mean, they're straight up insane, or on drugs at the time that we get there. So you never know what these people are going to do. And I mean, even when I've called the police at this particular property, they still came to this property at that time. So it was kind of in the middle of that transition period. But they came, and they even told me you got to be armed at some of these places. So
Yeah.
I took their advice. Yeah, yeah, that's good. When people have nothing to lose, they lose it. Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, I guess if there are no other questions, then we can kind of wrap up here. I think we did record this one, so we can upload it to the group. People who missed it can see it if they want to. And
Yeah.
like always, if anything else comes up or any other questions come up, you're always free to ask. You can text, you can message us over there, you can call any of us.
Yeah, and if you guys want the info to Capital Title, Julie just made a little comment here, so you can go ahead and reach out to them if you have any questions or concerns, or if you guys just need some help on something. So I'm not necessarily setting this as an expectation, but it's great when you can work with people who understand that real estate is not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of job. Now, I'm not calling these people at all hours, but occasionally you do need help, and the fact that they're available, it's just really, really great. So really refreshing.
Yep. And for those of you who had asked who had done the escrow and title on that the last week's talk with the seller financing, it was Capital Title, and
Yep.
Heidi was my escrow officer. She's here in the group right now.
Everyone's favorite deal.
Were you talking about Wonder Park?
Yes, Wonder Park.
That was a fun one. I mean, it was crazy, but that's literally the stuff that I enjoy doing. It's awesome what you guys can put together, and I love to be a part of that.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's we work with Capital Title because they're good people over there. We don't have any incentive to recommend them, but we like to recognize people that we ourselves like to work with. So
Yeah.
I think it's a real testament.
Yep. All right. Well, again, if there's no other questions, then we'll wrap up here, call it a day, and hopefully there is some value here for everybody.
Yeah. And if there's something else that you guys want to see or want us to talk about, you can go ahead and post it in the chat, and yeah, just let us know.
Yeah, we'll try to do this on a semi-regular basis. I know there's a lot of brand new people, and there's a lot of people who are actively doing this too. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that any one of us are doing that can help shed that experience that helps all of us overall.
Yeah. And if you don't have to make the same mistakes that we made, then you know
Yeah.
you're just a little bit ahead of us then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me make the mistake for you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thanks everyone.